Carlos Humberto Santana Barragán was born on July 20, 1947, in Autlán de Navarro, Jalisco, Mexico, into a deeply musical family. His father, José Santana, played the violin in a mariachi band, which inspired young Carlos to start playing violin at the age of 5. But by 8, he discovered a deeper love for the guitar. Drawn to the sounds of blues legends like B.B. King, T-Bone Walker, and John Lee Hooker, Carlos developed a strong passion for music. In 1955, his family moved to Tijuana, where he was introduced to American rock and roll and blues. Then, in the early 1960s, they relocated to San Francisco, immersing him in the city's counterculture music scene. He became a U.S. citizen in 1965. In 1966, Carlos formed the Santana Blues Band, which would later become simply Santana. The group became famous for blending rock, Latin, jazz, blues, and Afro-Cuban rhythms, especially through Carlos's soulful guitar work and the use of Latin percussion. The band's big break came in 1969 at Woodstock, where they delivered a powerful performance, despite Carlos being under the influence of LSD at the time, something he later said he barely remembered. That same year, their debut album Santana was released and climbed to number 4 on the Billboard charts, with the hit Evil Ways. Their second album, Abraxas, 1970, featuring songs like Black Magic Woman, Gypsy Queen, and Oi Como Va, became a massive success and stayed on the charts for 88 weeks, earning quadruple platinum status. The band continued to grow with albums like Santana 3, 1971, and Caravanserai, 1972, the latter showing a turn toward jazz fusion inspired by Carlos's admiration for artists like Miles Davis and John Coltrane. Throughout the years, Santana's sound evolved, blending jazz and spiritual themes. In the early 1970s, Carlos became a disciple of spiritual teacher Sri Chinmoy and was given the name Devadip, meaning the lamp of the Supreme. By 1992, Carlos had embraced Christianity, reflecting his ever-deepening spiritual journey. Some of his more experimental albums, like Illuminations, 1974, with Alice Coltrane, weren't big commercial hits. In fact, Columbia Records saw some projects, like Lotus, 1974, as too niche, even calling them career suicide. Still, Santana pressed on, releasing Amigos, 1976, and Moonflower, 1977. Band members came and went, but Carlos remained the driving force, often collaborating with other major musicians like Buddy Miles, John McLaughlin, and Herbie Hancock. In 1999, Carlos made a historic comeback with Supernatural, a star-studded album that included Rob Thomas, Lauryn Hill, and Eric Clapton. The album sold over 25 million copies and earned 9 Grammy Awards in one night, tying Michael Jackson's record. The hit single Smooth became the second most successful Billboard single of all time. His later albums, including Shaman, 2002, All That I Am, 2005, Corazon, 2014, and Blessings and Miracles, 2021, continued to build his legacy. Carlos Santana has sold more than 100 million records, played to over 100 million fans, and won 10 Grammy Awards and 3 Latin Grammys. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1998 and received the prestigious Kennedy Center honors in 2013. In 2023, Rolling Stone ranked him the 11th greatest guitarist of all time. Outside of music, Carlos has devoted himself to philanthropy. With his first wife, Deborah King, whom he married in 1973 and divorced in 2007, he founded the Milagro Foundation in 1998. The foundation has donated over $8 million to help underprivileged youth in education, health, and the arts. In 2010, he married drummer Cindy Blackman, and the couple worked together on projects like Power of Peace, 2017, with the Isley Brothers. Santana has also launched various lifestyle products under the brand ROC, from shoes and guitars to cannabis products, showing his broad cultural impact. A painful chapter, overcoming childhood trauma behind Carlos Santana's success, is a painful story he bravely revealed later in life. Between the ages of 10 and 12, while living in Tijuana, Carlos was sexually abused by an American man. The man lured him across the US-Mexico border with promises of gifts and toys, exploiting the family's poverty and Carlos's innocence. This predator, whose identity Carlos has never made public, used manipulation and secrecy to maintain control over the young boy. In a 2000 interview with Rolling Stone, Santana spoke openly about this dark time in his life. He said he had suppressed the memories as a child, a common way young survivors cope with trauma. At the time, Carlos didn't have the emotional tools to understand or express what had happened, so he buried the pain deep inside. This period of trauma occurred just as he was beginning to discover music and adapt to major changes in his life. While his father introduced him to mariachi and the beauty of music, and while American blues and rock were shaping his style, the abuse cast a long shadow over these years. The psychological impact was intense. Feelings of shame, fear, and confusion settled into his subconscious, influencing how he viewed himself and the world. Though Santana didn't speak about the abuse for many years, it affected him deeply. Childhood sexual trauma often leaves long-lasting wounds. It can cause difficulties with trust, self-esteem, and emotional closeness, all of which Santana had to navigate as he built a career and coped with the pressures of fame. His immersion into spirituality during the 1970s, especially through Sri Chinmoya's teachings of peace and inner growth, can be seen as his search for healing and purpose. Later, Santana converted to Christianity in 1992, continuing his spiritual journey. His music began to reflect themes of healing, faith, and transformation. Songs like Maria Maria, and albums like Blessings and Miracles carry a hopeful tone that connects deeply with listeners, and perhaps allowed Carlos to express emotions he couldn't put into words otherwise. Therapy also became part of his healing process. Though Santana hasn't shared many details about his counseling, he has acknowledged that therapy helped him revisit and understand the trauma he had long buried. Combining therapy with his spiritual beliefs, Santana found strength to process the pain and reclaim his story. Carlos has shown incredible courage by using his platform to speak out, not just for himself but for countless other survivors. His decision to share such a private and painful memory publicly was a powerful act of healing and advocacy. It showed others that it's possible to move forward, to heal, and to find light even after the darkest of experiences. His guitar playing, known for its deep emotional tones, became more than just music. It became a language of healing. Whether intentional or not, Santana's performances often feel like he's pouring his soul into every note, using music to channel emotions he once had no words for. And beyond the stage, Carlos Santana has remained committed to helping those in need. His foundation support for young people shows how he turned personal pain into purpose. Through music, advocacy, and giving back, Carlos Santana has not only shaped modern music but also become a symbol of resilience, spiritual strength, and hope. In 1998, Carlos Santana and his first wife, Deborah King, started the Milagro Foundation, a name that means miracle in Spanish. They created it to help underprivileged youth, especially in the areas of arts, education, and health. This wasn't just charity, it came from a place deep in Santana's heart. His own difficult childhood made him empathetic toward children struggling in similar ways. He knew what it was like to feel powerless, voiceless, and ignored, and this foundation was his way of breaking that cycle for the next generation. Through grants and support for programs that empower young people, Santana poured his energy into creating real change. His own healing journey was painful and personal, but he chose to turn it outward, using his fame and resources to lift others who might not otherwise get a chance. It became clear that music was only one part of his legacy, compassion was another. But before Santana could fully step into his power, life had more challenges in store. In 1967, when he was just 19 years old and finally gaining traction in the music world, he was suddenly stopped in his tracks by a frightening diagnosis: tuberculosis. By then, he had moved from Mexico to Tijuana and then to San Francisco, where he was completely immersed in the electric energy of the local music scene. Influenced by blues legends like B.B. King and T-Bone Walker, he had already formed the Santana Blues Band and was playing gigs at iconic places like the Fillmore West. Big opportunities were starting to open up, including opening for The Who and Steve Miller. Everything seemed like it was finally falling into place, until his body betrayed him. Tuberculosis, a serious bacterial infection that mostly affects the lungs, wasn't common in America anymore thanks to antibiotics and public health advances. But it still lingered in poor communities, especially among immigrants with limited access to healthcare. Santana, living in modest conditions and likely under stress, became a target for the illness. The symptoms hit hard: coughing, fevers, night sweats, weight loss, and an overwhelming fatigue that no aspiring musician could afford. For someone whose career depended on breath control, physical stamina, and emotional focus, TB was more than an illness, it was a threat to everything he had built. The diagnosis landed him in San Francisco General Hospital for 3 months. There, he received intensive treatment with strong antibiotics like isoniazid and streptomycin, which had revolutionized TB care since the 1940s. The drugs worked but came with brutal side effects: nausea, exhaustion, and even potential hearing loss. Every injection was a reminder of how fragile his dreams really were. While he lay in a hospital bed, the band's momentum slowed. Santana was the core of their sound, and without him, their performances lacked their spark. Though his bandmates tried to rehearse and keep things going, the Bay Area music scene was competitive and fast-paced. Missing gigs meant missing chances to be discovered, and new bands were always ready to take your spot. Financial strain added more stress. The group relied on shows to survive, and now that income had stopped, But even in the middle of this setback, something stronger was growing inside Carlos Santana, a kind of inner fire, a stubbornness to not let go of his dreams. When he was finally released from the hospital, his body was weak, but his spirit was stronger than ever. He rejoined his band with a new focus. His fight with tuberculosis became a defining chapter in his life. It showed him what true resilience meant and deepened his understanding of hardship. Music promoter Bill Graham, who had already taken an interest in Santana, wasn't deterred by the delay. Instead, he continued to support the band, eventually giving them their big break at Woodstock in 1969. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. That legendary performance helped launch them to stardom and proved that setbacks, even serious ones, don't have to be the end of the road. But even decades later, Santana's health would once again test his strength. In December 2021, at the age of 74, he had to undergo an emergency heart procedure. Though details about the condition weren't shared publicly, the announcement came through social media with a message of hope. Santana reassured fans that he would be back soon, and his wife, drummer Cindy Blackman Santana, stood by him during the recovery. Still, the scare forced him to cancel a series of Las Vegas residency shows at the House of Blues, events that had become a major part of his life and income since 2012. Just when things seemed to be stabilizing, a second health crisis struck. On July 5, 2022, while performing at an outdoor concert in Michigan, Santana suddenly collapsed mid-performance. It was a terrifying moment for everyone present. He had been giving it his all on stage, as always, but the intense heat and humidity led to heat exhaustion and dehydration. Paramedics rushed to help, and he was quickly taken to a nearby hospital. The sight of their hero fainting on stage was a shock to fans, but Santana bounced back, once again showing the grit he had become known for. In February of that same year, another obstacle appeared when he and several band members tested positive for COVID-19. The pandemic had already devastated the live music industry, and this new wave forced more cancellations. Yet again, Santana put safety first and postponed his shows, choosing caution over risk. These back-to-back health scares could have sidelined anyone, but not Carlos Santana. His recovery wasn't just about medicine, it was about mindset. Decades of overcoming adversity had trained him to fight through hardship with grace and faith. His spiritual beliefs, a blend of Christianity and the teachings of Indian guru Sri Chinmoy, gave him a grounding force that helped him navigate pain and uncertainty. With Cindy at his side, offering love and strength, and fans around the world sending prayers and encouragement, he found the will to keep going. After each scare, he returned to the stage with the same fire in his heart, determined to keep sharing his music as long as he could stand. These later life struggles reminded him, and the world, that even legends are human. But they also showed what set Santana apart, a deep resilience born of experience, humility, and a lifelong commitment to healing, both for himself and for others. His music, rich with soul and spiritual energy, became even more powerful in the context of everything he had endured. From a child surviving abuse to a teenager fighting tuberculosis, and now to an elder icon facing aging and illness, Carlos Santana remained unbroken. His story is one of triumph, not just because of fame or awards, but because he faced darkness time and again, and turned it into light for others to follow.